It's incredible, Steve. The fact that you've been cancer-free for 7 years.
Yes.
And life has been okay.
Yes.
And now you finally understand what the real true meaning of life is.
Yes.
And I love what you said. Now you're banking things in a different way.
Yes.
I walk in redemption.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to God for that. And by the time you see this video, I will have been in Romania, first talking to Andrew Tate and I believe his brother Tristan. We're going to have a sit down. Should be very interesting. I know some of you are going to say, why are you sitting down with Andrew? Well, you could also say, why is Andrew sitting down with me? You know, because we're going to have a good conversation, one that I think is very necessary about manhood and a few other things that we agree on. Maybe there'll be things we don't necessarily agree on, but that's what conversation is all about. I'm looking very forward to that for sure. And then I'll be in the United Kingdom, probably there by the time you see this video, and really excited about that. Last time I was there in 2022, we had a great tour. We're going to have another great one this time. The link is up there with all the dates. There's still some tickets available, so please, by all means, come and see me. We're going to have a great time. We are going to be signing books, taking photographs, answering questions. Going to give you something a little different than you saw the last time. Going to give kind of a history of the mafia here in the United States, Cosa Nostra I should call it. It's going to be a great tour, and I have some very special canvases that we're bringing there. People are going to want this. Trust me, you see the one behind me. We've been selling them like crazy on a limited basis, but you're going to be able to see that in the United Kingdom. So I think we have 10 dates. We end up in Dublin. Very excited about that. Missed it last time. But it's going to be a really exciting tour. So looking forward to it and hope to meet many of my friends there in the United Kingdom. You know, every once in a while there's a story or you meet a person that you're just fascinated by. You know, they've got an amazing story, an amazing life, a lot of accomplishments. And the gentleman that I sat down with for this interview is somebody I really took a liking to. He's a special guy. He really is. Great family man, successful businessman, and just an all-around good person. But what a story he has. And people, you know, it's all about triumph over tragedy. You know, it doesn't matter who we are in life, what our economic status is. You know, tragedy can strike anybody at any time. And it's really about how you deal with it, you know, that really matters, that really talks about the person that you are. And this gentleman here, I don't want to get into the story. I want him to explain it, but I've got so much respect for him, what he's accomplished in his life, and really the lessons that he's learned, you know, from a near tragedy, not a near tragedy, but several near tragedies. You're going to see this and you're going to say, how did he survive all of this? But to be where he is now and to have overcome all these obstacles, still have a great family, it's just an incredible story. So his name is Steve Fleischmann. And you know, Steve is a guy that's come out of Seattle. And could you imagine there was so many great companies that have come out of Seattle? You know, you got Costco, you got Starbucks, you got Microsoft with Bill Gates. You got so many and many, many more. And Steve is, you know, kind of in that circle, I would say. Very successful guy, and you know, I know you're going to enjoy his story. So without me talking any further, I don't want to give anything away. Here is my guest, Steve Fleischmann. Steve, I've been very much looking forward to this ever since I was introduced to you by my partner. To say that you have an incredible journey, that you've overcome some obstacles is really an understatement. I think you're the first guy that I know that has more than 9 lives. And really to come out on the other side of it the way you have is really a testament to just your determination and to, you know, to everything about you. So my viewers would love to hear about this because we're all about overcoming obstacles here. And I try to be an encouragement to people. I try to be an example to that as much as I can be. And I don't think there's anybody that I would rather sit down with and let people understand that if you're determined and you have some blessing in life, that you can overcome most anything. So please, tell us about your journey.
Well, I'm going to go into the different episodes short version.
Okay.
So I owned a very large company in Seattle, and I went in for a physical. I actually postponed my physical by a year thinking I'm healthy, everything's fine. I was 47 when I went in for my physical. My doctor did its usual rectal exam, but felt something weird and said, I think you should go get a biopsy. I had a very low PSA, nothing to think about, so I did. Then I took my family on a trip, came back, and I had not heard from my doctor. And I'm 47 years old. And a week goes by, 10 days go by, I call my doctor. And I go, I assume everything's okay. I haven't heard from you. He said, well, actually, I have bad news for you. I go, I called you and you're telling me, why didn't you call me? He said, I was going to. He said, you got cancer, and not only do you have cancer, you have a very advanced cancer. And I went into shock, not expecting that. And so I immediately called my wife, who was at the park with our little kids having playtime, and said, I'm about to tell you something that is going to be the worst thing I could ever tell you in our relationship, and please don't react. And I said, I've been diagnosed with advanced stage cancer. I was sitting in my office in downtown Seattle, and I just sat in silence, and she came to my office, and we just spent hours where I had nothing. I was angry. I didn't know how to react. The first thing I said is, I don't want anybody to know. As a man, I wanted my pride. I wanted to keep this quiet. I didn't want to show weakness. I was insecure about the whole thing. And she said, my wife is a therapist, no, this is the first time in your life you're going to be open, transparent, and you're going to find out what can come back your way by being open and honest. So I went ahead and I told my staff, I told my good friends. Anyway, the love that came my way was overwhelming. So I got through that obstacle.
Steve, what do you think? It's interesting. Why do you think as men we react like that right away? We don't want anybody to know anything. We want to internalize it all.
Well, I've done a lot of work on that, both in my own therapy and just in life, that men want to show strength, and I personally believe it takes more strength to show weakness. So when a man is willing to be vulnerable and he's willing to show the insecurities, that to me is actually a strong man. But most men are just built, and I think the new generation, the Generation Z, is a bit different. But our generation, because we're close to the same age, it's like I want to be stoic, and they're built to not want to show emotion and feel emotion.
I think I would have reacted the same way. Question though, curiously, did you have any symptoms prior to this at all?
None.
None.
Total shock.
That's what's so scary about this.
Yes. So I went ahead and had a operation soon after, and I think this is a bit of an interesting story. I was in prep before you go for surgery and buzzed on all the drugs. And now I'm being wheeled into surgery. I'm very scared, but I've got my surgeon wheeling the bed of my wife up to the point where she can't go any farther. While I was in prep, I had created in my mind, how can I pay back the University of Washington Medical Center for helping me with prostate cancer and doing this operation? Especially the doctor that did my procedure was world renowned. I had created in my mind this whole prostate cancer fundraising breakfast event. But now I'm being wheeled into surgery, pretty buzzed, and all I said to my doctor is, you get me through this, I'm going to do a breakfast for you. I said to my wife, I look back and I'm going to get Lance Armstrong. Back then he was just the biggest hero.
Yes, yes.
My wife thought, you're high on drugs. My doctor literally thought, okay, fine, we'll have breakfast. So months after I recuperated, I called him and I said, Dr. Lang, I'm ready to move forward on that breakfast. He said, well, what day do you want to go? I said, no. I explained the whole concept, and fast forward, I put together many prostate cancer events in Seattle. It was a big breakfast that we have now raised over $14 million for the University of Washington Medical Center. So
Is
that
this
was
specifically to
prostate
combat
cancer.
prostate
Yes.
cancer? Wow.
In fact, to be a table captain, you had to be a man that had prostate cancer. That way I knew people that they invited, it would be hard to say no to a guy that's inviting you that had cancer. So I got through all that and still not really recognizing what it meant because, okay, I got through the procedure. Well, couple years later, 2007, I got it back a second time. So when your prostate's removed, cancer had spread because they had told me it was advanced. So then I realized, okay, now I got to deal with the second procedure. which is radiation 36 days in a row. I went through that whole thing
How soon after the
2
surgery?
years later.
2 years later. So did they know at the time that it had
They
spread,
had
or they
thought
weren't
it
sure?
could, but they wait until they feel that you're in a more serious situation. And I'm young, and one of the things that was against me is being so young. The odds were with aggressive cancer, I had too much time on my hand. I'd probably have to deal with it again. So I went through 36 days of radiation, and one of the things that came out of that after that is I said, my family, now I'm thinking, okay, I could die from this. I said to my wife, my kids were 9 and 6 at the time, I said, I am leaving my company. I had hired a CEO who was running it, but I said, we're going to go around the world for 8 months.
Okay, but wait a second. You just glossed over the fact that 36 days of radiation. What was that like?
You know, it's like what you have had to deal with in your life. And I can't even compare because you've been through what I would consider a much more dramatic.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I personally think what you've gone through, and I know enough about your story, you're quite a guy, I'll tell you that.
Well, thank
And
you.
have an inner strength that's just amazing. And it takes an inner strength, a different type.
Very taxing.
But you just tell yourself it's going to be fine, and you almost kind of get into a meditative, spiritual side to it, to where you go and you just know, I'm going to just be with it. I did start working out afterwards, and I think I mentioned earlier, I tore my rotator cuff halfway through surgery.
Yes.
I mean, through radiation, had to have surgery. But what was the biggest takeaway was I wanted to be with my family.
Let me ask you this, Steve. Did you ever, at some point in time, resign yourself and say, this is it, probably not going to make it?
No, I
Never.
always knew I'm going to keep fighting.
Great.
So we went around the world for 8 months, 22 countries. My kids were 9 and 6. And 3/4 of the countries were third world, because I wanted my kids to learn the real world. And it was one of these things, and I'm going to tell you a very quick story, that the first month we were together, we were in South America, I was still thinking about work. I could not plug into our trip. And we would be in a van that we had a driver, and my kids would get out of the car and follow my wife, and they didn't care whether I came or not, because I wasn't in the present. And they could feel that. Kids, they sense their parents, right?
Sure.
So finally, my wife kicked me in the ass. We're on our way to Machu Picchu. And we're driving up to there, and she looked at me and said, either you go home or you shift your attitude right now.
Wow.
And you get in the present and realize what this trip's about. And thank God it kicked in, my light bulb went off, and literally that day I changed. I went and became part of the experience. The very next day, when I got out of the car, my kids came with me. It was like they felt my energy level changed.
That's amazing.
So that was obviously 8 months of an incredible experience. On that trip,
I'll have to stop you here. Your wife seems to have been a major, major force, of course, in your life, but in your recovery,
yes.
both
every
emotionally and physically.
step. Yes. She
What
was
would we
a
do?
rock.
What would we do without the women in our lives, Steve?
That, I can tell you, I wouldn't be here today.
And I can say exactly the same.
And
without
if
a
I
doubt.
was here, you wouldn't want me on your show. Let's say that. Anyway, you're right. It
we
has
have,
been
we have
my
a lot
rock.
in common in that regard.
And
Absolutely.
we're very fortunate.
Yes.
Because that is really, at the end of the day, what's deeply the most important thing in our family. So while we were finishing this trip, it happened to have been 2008. Well, 2008 was the worst economy since the
Bad.
Great Depression. We're traveling, and every month I got a P&L. My company was literally going out of business. Every month, sales were dropping. We were losing money. And the irony is I didn't care. I was so happy being connected and with my family. Seriously, it was like, because I love money and I don't like to lose. But I was so happy and fulfilled. And I know that cancer was why I named my speech, the best thing that ever happened to me was getting cancer. I don't think I would have learned that part of me. So we made a decision that I was going to come back. I had to rebuild my company and then sell it and then move to Italy, which we did.
Wow.
So that was 2008. I rebuilt my company. I sold it in 2010. We moved to Italy. We lived in Florence. And I could not tell you how happy I was. Put our kids in the international school with my wife. It was just being Florence. I mean, it was an amazing experience.
All right. I have to impose upon you for a moment. We've been to a lot of places in Italy, never to Florence, but we're going this year.
I will tell you the restaurants to go to. I got those
Okay.
nailed, even though you don't have a problem with restaurants, but I know there's fantastic. When are you going?
We're going to, where are we going to? To France. I have a speaking engagement there. Where is it? Not Monte Carlo. Where am I going, Cam?
Monaco.
Monaco.
Oh, Monaco.
We've been to
Well,
Florence.
but only briefly.
Yeah.
We haven't spent much time there. So, yeah, going to Monaco and then to Florence for a couple of days. And then where else? The wine country.
Tuscany.
Tuscany. Oh, okay.
Oh, you're gonna
Have
love
you been?
it.
You been to
Multiple
Tuscany?
times.
Okay, great.
Multiple times.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and Florence I know like the back, but you're going to enjoy it a lot.
Great.
So I was living in Florence, and we went skiing in Chamonix, which is in France, as a family. And my kids at this time are 13 and 10. They're not great skiers. I'm with them a week. We're skiing. I'm a better skier, but I skied with my family. The very last day we were there, I said to my family, I'm going to go do my last day of skiing. I'm going to go on my own. Well,
All right, a question two now. So the cancer is done,
I'm done for my second time. No problem.
cancer-free.
Cancer free.
Okay.
Best of my knowledge. I go skiing on my own. I go up to the very highest peak they have. I'm skiing and I'm loving it. Unfortunately, I made the wrong turn. Kind of ended up in the back country. Didn't know it because in Europe they don't groom the hills. And it was such a steep incline. My ski popped off, and this was like 2 p.m. And I couldn't put my ski back on. It was too steep. So after I tried a few times, I said, I got to go find a place to put my ski back on. I had no idea where I was. And I found it, from at a distance, is what it looked like, a flat place. I start walking, one ski on, one ski in my hand, with my poles, and I start hearing a loud sound.
No.
And when I say a loud sound, when you're hearing an avalanche, it's
An
thunder.
avalanche. Oh my God.
I hear this, I look up, and there it is coming down, and it picked me up, threw me, because I was in the back country. I probably was thrown about 300 yards in the air. While I'm in the air, I actually said, I'm going to die. And when you're in an avalanche, you're being tossed and turned, and I have my ski on. So, I had no idea. It happened so quickly. Anyway, I landed at the edge of a cliff, 1,000-foot drop in a net. In fact, the net had been half buried by the avalanche. So it was like this much of a net.
And why was the net there? In
Because-
case there's a skier that went off base, or
I think the avalanche issues, and so they
Wow.
probably use it for that reason, I guess. It saved my life. But here I am. I'm buried up to here. I have no idea if anything's broke. I have no idea. My face is cut. I only know that because I can feel blood coming down. And a second avalanche came.
gosh.
And I'm watching this thing come down. I closed my eyes. I said, Dear God, this is it. I love my family. And the avalanche stopped about 100 yards in front of me. So that's the avalanche piece. And now I'm there. I'm screaming my head off. I have no idea how long. And finally somebody heard a scream. They looked over the cliff. They saw a head bobbing around. And I don't even know how long, about 20 ski patrol came to bail
So
me
you were
out.
buried
I was buried.
up to your
Yeah,
up to your
I
neck.
had no movement. Fortunately, my mouth is out of the snow, and I'm frozen. They took me down the mountain, and I went to my family, and they had been called, the whole thing. It's a big deal when you're in an avalanche. So that happened. Now I'm back in Florence. I'm going, and I'm still getting my PSA tests, because that's just what you do when you've had cancer twice.
Now, did you break anything through the avalanche?
No, cuts. I had cuts all over, but no broken, thank God.
Wow.
More importantly, I survived. In Italy, a few months after that, my cancer came back again.
Where this time? Anywhere?
Well, that was the issue. They didn't know where. My PSA escalated. In Milan, Italy, they had at a hospital a particular test. Only one in the world happened to have been in Milan. They have an actual big medical facility. I went in and had this test. Bottom line is it showed where the cancer was or where it could be. And it was an operation that the University of Washington had never performed before. It was very scary because it was the very bottom of my pelvic area. They literally had to take, this is going to sound terrible, all my insides out so that they could have access to it.
Jeez.
Unfortunately, it was cancer. Because if it had been popcorn seeds, I would have like, wow, what a waste. So I recovered from that. And okay, I'm done. Now 3 times. I'm clean. A few months after that, I started getting migraine headaches. I know this sounds weird. This is all the truth. Everything is just the way it happened.
I know that.
And I had no idea why in the hell was I deserving of all this, but it is what it is. And so I started getting migraine headaches, and they were severe. I went to a specialist. They gave me migraine pills. And the only way I was able to be strong enough to deal with that is I had a prostate breakfast event coming up. And I just focused on that. And I had Colin Powell coming. So it was really important to me to have it be like a phenomenal event.
Sure.
Colin Powell had prostate cancer. So I went in a week before I went in and had shots,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay.
To deal with migraine, yes.
And that happened. That was like on a Monday. That Friday, we were going out, and I said to my wife, I don't feel good. So I stayed home. She went out. I had a stroke.
Oh,
My entire left side went numb. I couldn't walk. I was in bed, and I didn't know it was a stroke. I had no idea that could be. I didn't know. I thought that I had just migraines. I got up the next morning. I kind of like hobbled out of the house. I went to a spin class. I know this sounds crazy. It's what happened. My wife took a car. I took a car. I got on the spin bike thinking I could work it out. I just thought my body was numb, needed
Right.
some, circulation. About 10 minutes later, I fell off the bike. The instructor, of course, said, saw that it was something very serious. And my wife said, you got to get home. Go home. I got in my car. Again, true story. I start driving, and I couldn't turn the wheel to the right. I pulled off to the side of the road. I called my doctor, told him what happened. He said, you get right to the hospital, go right to the ER, to our main hospital in Seattle. And he said, get there immediately. And the irony is I could only turn the wheel to the left because my brain now had shifted to the one side of my head. So I only had movement on one side of my body. And it was 3 left turns.
Gosh.
All left turns, including my parking space
Steve,
was left.
there's an angel someplace
There was
around
an
here.
angel.
No
I
doubt.
go in, they were waiting for me. They rushed me in for an MRI, and then they rushed me in for surgery. And I had to ask them, can I please call my wife? I called her, I told her what's going on. And of course, that was that deal. So
Just was that in any way related to the prostate cancer? Just
no.
Separate incident.
Totally separate incident. They thought maybe it was related to the avalanche. I don't know. But it happened. So I ended up having a craniotomy where they take half your skull off. I had an aneurysm.
Oh my gosh.
They had to repair the veins that were broken, that were torn in where the brain connects. And then I was in ICU, and I survived that, and I finished. Again, you just have to survive. You have to deal. And one more time, it's just another reminder about my family, about what matters, all of the things that really do count in life, as you very well know, which kept you going for so
Absolutely.
many years. So now I feel okay. I got through that. And the neurologist said, I'm a miracle that I survived. I should have died the night before. I should have never been taken. I shouldn't have lasted that long, but I did. Now another couple years go by, and I get my cancer back for the 4th time. And this time it's very serious because the 4th time they started having less options for treatments. And I ended up going through a very severe 36 days of radiation again with hormone injections. It was brutal. Again, I just dealt. And finally, I took myself off the hormone. I'm going to end on this because it was really affecting my life and my physical feeling. Terrible backaches, etc. I took myself off before the doctor said to do it, but I said, I'm done. I'd rather just, whatever I have left, I'm not going to live with this kind of pain. And I will just tell you, that was April of 2017. We're now in 2024. I've been cancer-free since. Wow. So there's my version of my 9 lives.
Steve, it's unbelievable, but it's true. When I say unbelievable, for one person to have to go through all of those health issues, serious health issues. And, I think it's a testament to you. I've known people that kind of give up, resign themselves to the fact that, hey, this is it for me. Do you think your will to live had a lot to do with your recovery?
100%. And what made my will to live was I had changed my version of net worth. I changed it from not money you bank. It's the things you bank that matter more. Your family, your wife, your kids, your friends, the things that really do matter in life became my new bank account. So I changed my whole version of my self-worth to my net worth versus money being my security blanket.
Let me ask you, that's very interesting. Prior to your first diagnosis with prostate cancer, you're obviously a very successful guy business-wise. Was it, were you driven more, and I know you always took care of your family and provided and so on, but were you driven more to be a success in business? And the reason I'm asking this, because I deal with men all the time that have had a successful business, but their home life suffered. And they come away with the rationalization, well, listen, I'm a good provider, I take care of my family, they got everything that they need, but they didn't get the time that they needed, and they start to see that later on.
Yes.
Do you say that you were kind of in that category?
100%. I was. And thank God, again, as you do, I have a wife that was a great mom, took great care of our kids, and allowed me to do all these things. Now, I provided, but there were sacrifices. I didn't have the connection to my family the way that what you're talking about. So, yes, I put work in my identity around work before, and really, truth, probably before my family, even though I love my family way more than my job.
Yeah, and I look, a lot of men who love their family, myself at one time included, I came home from prison. I was driven to reestablish and remake myself in a way, because I had to change my whole, ideology in a way and do things differently. And my family suffered as a result of that. But unfortunately, sometimes it takes something drastic to happen before we say, oh, okay, and we start to realize what's more important. It's incredible, Steve, the fact that you've been cancer-free for 7 years.
Yes.
And life has been okay.
Yes.
And now you finally understand what the real true meaning of life is.
Yes.
And I love what you said. Now you're banking things in a different way.
Yes.
Okay, so that leads us to something that you've had a passion for. And I personally love this because I was one of those guys that you might have had a passion for at one point in time.
Well, and I have a passion for you now. So there you go.
I appreciate that. But and it's, as a Christian, I would call it a ministry, because it is what you're doing. But tell us how that started, how you got involved with this whole prison mission that you're on, and you have been on for many, many years to help people in prison.
Well, I mean, again, I told you earlier, it really started, I suppose, my father hired men that had gotten out of prison. He'd hired them. They were typewriter mechanics. Mm-hmm. So he would hire them because they would repair his typewriters while they were in. My dad took typewriters to the different prisons for them to fix it, to do the repair work.
And why do you think your dad had a heart for that at that point?
It wasn't a heart. It was very inexpensive labor.
Ah, okay.
It was a business decision.
Okay.
And back in those days, Walla Walla and Monroe, the two main penitentiaries, actually back in those days had some rehab programs. They at least had guys that could learn trades. I mean, now it's much more difficult, and that'd be another discussion.
So your dad actually made a deal with the prison system to have these men work on the
what's
typewriters.
interesting, Boeing had these typewriters. It was manual typewriters only back then. They threw them away. My dad took them. He said, give them to me. He would then take them to the prisons, they'd fix it, and he'd sell them back to Boeing.
Wow.
Repaired.
Okay.
So I hung around these guys, and I had always been just with an EQ, an emotional feeling towards these guys. Got to know them, and I suppose that's where it started. But really, in my 20s, I started getting, and I'm now 68, I started getting way more involved. And as I traveled around the world for many, many years, I've visited penitentiaries literally all over the world. But the main work I've been really doing is in the last 10 years working with a specific maximum security prison in Washington State. And I have spent my energy working with men serving life sentences. So that's really where I've done all my work, and I have gotten to know these guys, and I have fallen in love with all of them, the guys that I have gotten to know. And on Monday nights, they have groups that get together, and I get in their groups, all the men serving life sentences. 1 week is for men over 60, and they talk about it. One is from family, foster kids. They talk about, so every week they bring the same guys, but they have different subjects. And I was the only outsider that would sit in with these guys, so they got comfortable with me. But eventually what I ended up doing is getting involved with clemency work. And there was a man that had been serving a double life sentence for a double homicide. His name's Eugene Youngblood.
Yes.
To this day, we're very good friends. And I worked on his clemency case for years. I went to his clemency hearing in Olympia, Washington, our capital. And it's completely packed. I'm the only white guy in the entire room. I'm the only Jewish guy for sure. I'm in the front row. I'm sitting next to his 2 daughters and his mom. I mean his ex-wife, excuse me. They have no idea who I am. Eugene's up on a big screen because he's in prison.
Right.
And we're all doing our part to tell the story why he should be freed. They actually, when you're done with this 3-hour hearing, they deliberate while you're there. And the 3 judges, they start talking, and then they make a decision. And in this case, they granted him his freedom. Eugene's up on the big screen bawling, of course.
Sure.
I am bawling, and I go up and start hugging his daughters and his ex-wife, who have no idea who I am still. And they,
So they didn't know you were working on
They
this.
had no idea who I was.
Wow.
So then quickly I explained. But here's the sad part. He got freedom. He was granted freedom. Had to go. He's still in prison. Our governor was running for a second term. Wouldn't sign the paperwork.
Yeah, so I was going to say, afraid to sign the paperwork.
And it was the first time anyone for a double homicide would have been granted clemency in the state of Washington in history. So even more so, he didn't want that.
Sure.
I was a dog on his pant leg. I wouldn't let go, and I kept on it. I got community leaders to send letters. Long story short, he sat for 18 more months in prison as a free man until the governor finally signed off. And then he was let out, and to this day we stay in very close touch.
You know, Steve, something that you said and that I noticed, during my 8 years of prison that I did, and I was in medium security most of the time. And I was around a lot of guys that were doing life, and they had made their way down from a maximum to a medium. And those are the guys that I wanted to hang out with. They always had a peace about them. They always conducted themselves the right way. You say they knew how to do time, but there was something different about them, And even since then, when I visited prisons, it was funny. When I'd go into a prison, people would say to me in there, the administration, well, we're going to give you the guys that are ready to come home and you can talk to them. I said, I don't want those guys. I want the guys that are going to be here, that are doing hard time. I want to talk to them because they're the ones that need, they need to hear the right things from people. And, it's amazing, and this, the impact that you can have on some of the, I say men because I've dealt with men most of the time, the impact that you can have when they believe that there's somebody that really cares. And I thank you just for having been in that experience and knowing how meaningful it is to the men that you talk to. And more people should think about this. The other thing is I spoke in front of Senate staff and a couple of senators on an anniversary of 9/11. It was in D.C., I forget, it was a couple of years ago. And we talked about prison reform, and I told them, if you really care about your constituents, I said, then you would try to rehabilitate these guys, because if you don't, when they come out, they're going back into the neighborhoods and doing the same things that they did before because they don't know any better. I said, being in prison is the punishment. Now you need to preserve society and do a better thing for your communities by helping these guys. And most of them want that. You know this, Steve. Most guys want that.
It's a broken system.
It is.
And, you may know this fact, but we have under 5% of the world population in the U.S., and we have over 50% of the incarcerated.
Absolutely.
85% are of color.
Yes.
And that says it all. I mean, and many of them just made a bad judgment in that moment.
Absolutely.
And they deserve to be visible, and like you say, these guys, they accepted what they did, but most of the guys I had been with had been in prison a long time, and all they were focusing on was bettering themselves.
Yeah.
And I actually had better conversations with them than my friends I'd had for many
Yeah.
years.
No, it's absolutely true.
And then solitary confinement, I hope we can have a little
Sure.
discussion on. Because
Sure.
this may be sounding like an advertisement for you, but you're new in my life since your best friend introduced me to
Yeah.
you and sent me 2 of your podcast shows.
Thank you.
I have watched them, but not only have I watched them, I am now hooked.
Thank
And
you.
I am seeing show after show that you have, and you have so many on YouTube, among other channels. And you deserve to have all the praise that you have
Thank
earned,
you.
because you have. And you're bringing life to all of these people that you interview that have been through whatever they've been through, to let them be heard and be seen. But the men that you've talked to in prison and what you had to deal with in solitary confinement for 9 months,
29 months, yeah.
is, people don't understand what that means. I mean, I know you've said it at times a bit on your show. There's nothing worse than being in solitary confinement.
No, it's very
What
difficult.
kept you going?
You know, well, for me, it was 2 things. It was, fortunately, it's when I came to my faith. You know, the people like to say, well, you know, you found God in prison, I guess, you know, or God found me, one of the way, you know, either ways. But that was sustaining for me, because I really dove into my Bible and to books that my wife sent me in, and just, you know, I was listening to, there was a pastor that I loved that I started listening to on my Sony Walkman that kind of, all these things sustained me. And of course, my determination to get home to my wife. And
Did you ever have feelings of hopelessness, or did you always have faith that it's going to work out?
no, there's days when you just, you don't want to get off the cot that
And
you're
then what do
on.
you do when that happens? You just deal?
You deal with it, you know, you pray about it, and you know, at the time, what I did, you know what I found was so wonderful for me? Music. I don't know what I would have done without that Sony Walkman to listen to music. I remember one Easter night, I'm sorry, one Christmas night, it was Christmas Eve, really hard, because you know where your family is, you know where you want to be on Christmas, and you feel lost. And just a couple of Christmas songs came on that just elevated me to, okay, I'm all right. We're going to be okay. You know, there is an end game to this. I will get home. Music was so soothing, and it meant so much to me during that time. But I will say this, Steve, there were a lot of guys that when those lights went off, they did not do well. And I don't demean them at all, not one bit. I get it. I understand it. And I am dead set against it for young people. It will destroy them, because you have to have a pretty strong constitution to get, and you have to have a real determination to get home, to live. You know, I was wondering, I always thought about it. I said, man, if I was doing life, would it really matter that I'm in solitary? There's no end game. There's no future. You know, I'm going to tell you the truth. My first thoughts, the night that I was first locked up and put in solitary, and the government had said to me, you're never going home. We're indicting you on a new, I was in on a parole violation, but they said, we're indicting you on a new case. You'll never see the street again. Having visited my dad for 25 years and seeing the destruction for my family, knowing what my mother went through, all of them, I just had a young wife, and I'm saying, am I going to put her through this? If she's going to have to come every week to visit me, or once a month or whatever. I honestly, at that point in time, was my weakest moment, wanted to lay my head down on that pillow and say, God, just take me. I don't want to wake up. That was my moment. I said, why am I going to put my family through this? I may as well just end it. And not that I was suicidal, but I didn't want to wake
understand.
up.
So I have to ask you, when that happened, and I don't think anybody can really understand. It's like, when I have a friend that had a child that passed, I only can see, I don't even know what you're going through, because there's certain experiences you can say, I'm sorry, but you don't really know.
You don't know it, right.
How did you get through that when you would get to that low of a feeling?
Well, you know, that was the night they were going to transport me. I was in L.A., the federal jail in L.A., and they had to transport me back to Brooklyn in the morning. So I'm laying on the cot, and I've said this a million times, but it's appropriate now. A prison guard just walked by the cell, and he opened the flap on the door, and he said, are you okay? because I must have not looked very well. And I said, get away from me. Go away. I don't want to see you guys tonight. Leave me alone. I chased him away. And that's when he came back and pushed the Bible through the slot of the door. And my first reaction when I saw it, I was a little groggy. I picked it up, threw it against the wall. I was angry. I just, feel sorry for yourself, the whole bit. And then I picked up that book, and that's what started me. That's when I believe that God spoke to my heart and said, stop it. Get a hold of yourself, and let's get through this.
Talk about somebody who has somebody, and obviously I know you have a very strong religious belief,
Yeah.
rightfully so, but that was looking down on you.
Yeah.
That he actually did something to help you become a free man. So you got an opportunity to continue to build the family, to be with your wife, your kids. You have 7 kids?
7.
And
7 grandkids, too.
And 7 grandkids, and a very loving family. And
Yes.
as you said, they live 5 miles. You're a tight family. There's nothing better. But that, from that as low as you can get to what you are able to rebuild is amazing and unusual. So I give you a lot of credit.
Well, I
It's
appreciate it.
unusual.
Steve, it's all about, first of all, there's no question, and I let people understand this. I don't consider myself religious. I don't like that word. Sometimes people misunderstand the connotation of religion. But I am a person of faith. And there's no question that God uplifted me that night. No question. I mean, I felt it. I felt something in my heart. And it really mattered. But, the second part about this, one of the messages that I give young people all the time, I said, let me explain something to you. I said, there's 2 things you got to worry about in life. Number 1, remember this. You are who you hang out with. Pick your people
Yeah, I always
wisely.
use, we are the company we keep.
100%. We are who we hang out. We are the company that we keep. And second of all, who you are accountable to in life is going to direct the path that your life goes on. And I always say this, when I was on the street, I was accountable to my oath, to my boss, to Cosa Nostra back then. I was a criminal. I had the wrong way of thinking. After that, I come to the Lord. I have my wife, my family, the kids that matter, my kids that matter to me. I'm accountable to them, so it keeps me on the right path. So important, who you hang with and who you're accountable to in life. Those are the 2 keys, in my opinion, in my experience. And the reason that I'm here, sitting here, okay, number 1, because my God had a different plan and a purpose for me, but my wife, who motivated me, who kept me straight, who, when I had the wrong thoughts, she brought me back to center. And you don't do it alone. You know that. I mean, a perfect example, just from telling your story, I saw how important your wife was in your life. And, people need to understand this. You don't do this alone. I'm going to be honest with you, too. This might be a little offensive for a moment, knowing that your wife is, but
I'm married to a therapist, nothing's offensive.
Okay. Well, I said, therapy, I don't believe in it. They're all lunatics. And I tell my wife, and she used to get mad at me. No, you're wrong. Sometimes you have to talk to people. That was this macho thing. I can't talk to anybody. My troubles are my own, and I'll deal with them. I disagree with that now. I mean, you need people to talk to. Yes. Absolutely. And they can be helpful. There's no question about it. I saw my daughter go through therapy when we had a trauma situation for her. It's extremely helpful. So, but just, I think your story shows you determination, how you can overcome obstacles, how you need people around you to support you. And it is manly, I think, to let your hair down sometimes. There's nothing demeaning about that. It doesn't make you less of a man.
I think it makes you more of a man.
I agree with you. Listen, the only time I ever saw my father cry, who was, for a time, the epitome of what manhood would be, was at his mom's funeral. Because my dad was in jail at the time, and we had to jump through hoops to get him out, just to come to the funeral for an hour to see his mother. And he had a breakdown. I never forgot that. And I said, my dad is human in that way. He does shed tears. And it was almost as painful as it was to watch him. I kind of got some satisfaction for him out of it, saying, okay. Because up till that point, he was always this stern figure,
Well, Well, I love that, and I also love that you have also helped, because I've now seen enough of your shows, that you're helping so many people by watching your shows and listening to give them hope. Because you have, I'm sure, a very wide demographics of who
Yes.
tunes in. And those that tune in, and it doesn't mean that they are on their way in or out of prison, it could be just in their life that you're helping them to rethink maybe the way that they were originally programmed. And I will add, can I add something?
Sure.
I've been this way most of my life, but especially over the last number of years, I'm kind of known for this in Seattle, but I say I love you to a lot of men. Now, I don't say it to somebody I don't know, I love you, man. I say to my friends that I really care about, and I remind them how much my friendship that this friendship means to me, and I let them know I love them because I want to do that while I'm healthy. And I try to encourage men, don't wait till you're sick. Don't wait till you're ill. Don't wait till you have a disease. Do it while you're healthy and alive, and appreciate the people around you, but tell them. And
You're
these
right.
guys that are stoic, and all of a sudden you say, I love you, they soften up a little bit.
You're right.
And we all feel better when we're coming from our soul.
Absolutely. You know, to further that, I have a friend of mine who's up north in California, and once a month he'll say, did anybody tell you yet today that they love you? I love you. And I don't know the guy really well. We met, we kind of bonded, but
Well, Michael, I love you. Let's just get it out of
well,
it.
same here, Steve. And you know, the fella that introduced us, my partner, your dear friend for all these years, my friend and partner for 30 years, he's the guy that 3 o'clock in the morning, I call him, everything drops and he's here in a minute. And he's a dear friend, and I love him, and he knows that, and he loves me, you know that. And it's good to have that relationship. You know, aside from marriage, which we all agree is the most special relationship, there's nothing more powerful than that bond among men.
Yeah.
You know, when people ask me, Michael, what do you miss about that life? You know, was it the money, the power? None of that, you know, honestly. It was the camaraderie, the bond, the brotherhood that we had with some of the guys. So powerful. And, you know, I have that today with some of the men that I know, that I consider dear friends and brothers. And I think, Steve, that's going to happen between us. It's already happening.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, because I know you have to run. You know, you're heading back. This was a real good experience for me. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. You have an incredible story. If there's any way, shape, or form I can help with the prison ministry, I'm going to call it that because it is a ministry. When you're helping guys to that effect, you certainly have my commitment there.
Thank you. Well, again, thanks for having me on your show.
Well, listen, I think we're going to do a lot more of this. I
hope
really
so.
mean it.
I hope
All right.
so.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know about any of you, but after hearing that story, I have to have a glass of wine. I mean, can you imagine surviving, you know, 2 avalanches, cancer that kept recurring so many times, and then what happened with his brain? I mean, all of this tragedy over a period of several years, he just kept fighting back. And what he's doing now, you know, the clemency that he's involved with inmates, you know, he's got a heart. This man really has a heart. It's an amazing story, people, and it should inspire every one of us. You know, it's not how the tragedy that affects us, it's how we deal with it. You know, the people around us, how they support us, what they do for us to encourage us. In Steve's case, it was his wife, like in my case with my wife. So it's just an incredible story. I am really privileged to know this man and have a friendship and a relationship with him. And I hope it inspires all of you. You know, we don't only do mob stuff on this channel, you know that. We try to give stories that are encouraging and motivating to people and inspiring to people. And I think this was certainly one of them. So I hope you enjoyed it. What else can I say? Every time we have a story that's so fascinating, we'll try to bring it all to you, because I think people need support and inspiration right now. So my friends, how do I always leave you? Same way. It's never going to change. Be safe. Ladies, do I have to remind you again? I hope not. Be safe. Be healthy. God bless each and every one of you and your families. And yes, I'll see you next time. Salud.